Welcome to the Intuitive Eating Mama podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer D'Amato. I am an intuitive eating counselor and I'm also a mom to four. This podcast is not just for mamas, it's for all women who are ready to ditch diets, ditch the scale and food guilt forever, and instead invite peace with food, increase their body trust, and confidence in all of her choices. I believe this show is going to shed some light on sneaky ways diet culture has infiltrated your thoughts, your family, and your well-being. No matter the episode, I want you to walk away feeling informed, inspired, and encouraged. So whether you're taking a walk, washing the dishes, or carting kids around, let's dive into the latest episode on the Intuitive Eating Mama podcast. Hey ladies, the podcast is back after a very short break for the new year, and I'm so excited to bring you my very special guest. Shannon Hennig is a certified personal trainer and exercise recovery specialist. She has a size-inclusive practice with zero emphasis on diet or weight loss. You know she's my girl. Her goal is to help clients find a movement they enjoy so they can feel better without having to navigate through diet culture nonsense. Y'all, this episode is so good. She shares her story, which is so impactful to the work that she does. I don't even want to wait another minute. Let's just dive in. Hey, Shannon, so glad you could be here on the podcast today. Welcome.
Hi, Jen. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and to have a really great conversation with you this afternoon.
Oh, I guarantee it'll be great. I guarantee that. But before we go any further, I want my listeners to get to know you a little bit. So can you just share a little bit about who you are, where you are, what you do?
Yeah, you bet. Of course. So my name is Shannon Hennig, and I'm a plus size personal trainer. Growing up, had a very negative relationship with food and exercise and was always struggling with my weight. And so I turned to using my brain instead of my body as kind of my source of power, if you will. So always did really well in school, went on to do a master's degree and used that to start a writing business and become a communications professional. And then about 2 years ago, had some really big health challenges that came my way. I was doing my own communications consulting, doing social media, working with health and wellness professionals. And I ended up going to hospital because I was rapidly gaining weight and had shortness of breath, cough. I had all kinds of these weird symptoms that kind of mimicked what I was told was COVID or what we thought was COVID. So I went to the hospital and they took a look at me and they were like, you know what? You've got some fluid retention going on. We don't think there's COVID. It's probably just a bad cold that you have. And this was despite like having high blood pressure and some other issues that were going on. So they sent me home. And then about 10 days later, I was still having these same symptoms and they were getting worse and worse. So I'd still continued to gain weight. I couldn't sleep. I had really high blood pressure, really high anxiety. And so then decided it was time to go back to the hospital to get taken seriously. I'd talked to a nurse practitioner over one of these online EAP providers that my husband had. And I told her what was going on. And she said to me, okay, you need to go back to the hospital and you need to advocate for yourself and you need to have the doctors there take you seriously and not leave until you've had a CT scan done of your lungs. I was like, oh, okay. So went back to the hospital. I was having pain, shortness of breath when I would lay down, like I couldn't lay down all the way. Blood pressure was crazy. And I did have to advocate for myself. I said, okay, like I'm really sick here. Somebody needs to pay attention to me and what's going on. So that meant like each time I got moved to a different place in the ER, it was like getting the nurse and being like, hey, I don't know what's going on, but you need to like figure it out really quick. So going for this CT scan and then get back to my new little room waiting in the ER. And within about 10 minutes, there's like a team of 20 people in front of me. And the doctor comes and he's like, hey, and I was 34 at the time. So this was like a total shocker for him and for me. He's like, okay, so what you have right now is pulmonary edema. which is where your lungs are filling with fluid and you're in heart failure. And I'm just like, WTF? And the the crew in front of me was there to send me over to do an emergency treatment where they basically blast you full of oxygen and give you diuretics. So you start peeing out all of this liquid that's been accumulating in your body. And the reason for the pulmonary edema was because of the heart failure. And so my heart was pumping at about less than half of what it should have been pumping in terms of the blood flow through my body. And so what then happens is fluid accumulates, and it was accumulating in my legs. And so this obviously was a huge shock. I mean, it was a shock to me and then to my poor husband. I didn't even get a chance to call him. I was texting. I was like, hey, honey, I'm in heart failure. Can you call my parents and your parents? And so this was one of these like, wow moments. So I ended up then staying in the hospital for about 6 days. 4 of those were in the ICU. And then I moved up to a regular cardiac unit. And what was kind of the, I guess, the miracle of modern science is that they're able to give you a concoction of meds that lower your blood pressure and make it so your heart's able to relax and essentially heal itself and knit itself back together. And so my heart was able to do that within 5 months, which is not typical. Part of it was my age, that I was younger. But then also a part of it was that I had been exercising regularly, but I continued with this exercise program once I had clearance from my doctors and was able to maintain and allow my heart to heal in this very short period of time. Like even my cardiologist was like, well, we expect maybe a 10% improvement in 5 months, not completely back to normal. So it was like, in some ways it was a miracle. In some ways, it was just a lot of things working in my favor. But it was through that I then became really interested in fitness and seeing it not as something that was a punishment, but something that was like really helping my body. And that in order for me to continue to have a good quality of life, and I was feeling so much better, that this was the type of thing that I needed to continue to do. And then it was about a year and a half ago that I integrated strength training into my program. Like I'd only ever done cardio. And I think so many of us do that. It's like, oh, I got to go running. I'm going to go on the elliptical. I'm going to do all these things, thinking that that's what's best for our bodies, because that's the message that we're sent. And then when we think of strength training, we just think of like bodybuilding and that you're going to get ripped. And like, I don't need to do that. I don't want to do that. Like, why would I do that? No, thank you. Looks miserable. It looks miserable. And so lo and behold, I started strength training. And then I started actually I had chronic pain issues, lots of chronic pain issues. I had fibromyalgia. I had a pre-existing neck injury that was causing me pain all the time. So I'd been living with all this pain. And then when I started strength training, it was like, boom, the pain suddenly disappeared. And I started seeing my body in a very different way. I started seeing it, I kind of got a kick out of like the fact that I can lift heavy weights now. Look at me carrying all my groceries in the door all at one time. I can do things that I couldn't do before without pain. And so seeing this drastic, massive improvement in my quality of life through exercise, I went, okay, this is cool. But here I am with the certification, knowing now how to properly train bodies and seeing this opportunity for me to then use my experience and say, hey, you know what? Like I live in a bigger body, so I understand the challenges, especially that mental side of things and how uncomfortable larger women can be when they are starting an exercise program, when they are continuing an exercise program, they show up at the gym and they feel completely intimidated. For so many plus size women, one of the biggest struggles is moving past the I have to exercise to lose weight, because that is to me where we have, well, it's a huge breakdown. It's a huge breakdown because there are so many benefits to exercise, whatever that looks like for somebody. There are so many benefits to it, even if it's just going for walks. But we have an all or nothing approach to it where we've made it so miserable and fear inducing that people hate it because they think, well, I'm going to be going to the gym 5 days a week. I'm going to the no pain, no gain, all of that crap that goes along with it. So they either go all in and then they quit in 2 weeks, or they don't do anything and they don't experience any of the benefits like better sleep, better mood, improved just like daily function, pain reduction, improved self-confidence. Like the list goes on and on and on. So we're stuck. And then I also really saw it as, and it sounds weird when you think about it, but plus size women are this like, yeah, they're the very much the target of diet culture and, all this marketing. Of course, you would like lose the mommy belly, transform yourself. You're not worth anything unless you look a certain
I love
way
your
or all
diet
that.
culture voice, Shannon. It's so
Oh,
funny.
I go, well, and you notice how it gets very masculine and very
It
like,
is. Well, yes, I do notice that. And I agree
yes.
for the use.
Well, and so plus size women, really, when you look at it from a marketing perspective, though, if you're really wanting them to get involved in a program, are very like that's genuinely going to help them with their health, which is incredibly underserved. Incredibly underserved.
Mm-hmm.
We're a target and a easy prey for personal trainers, for diet culture, for IG influencers, for everybody, because you're taking this one aspect of a woman, her appearance, which we put so much social and cultural value on, and then of course just ripping her confidence to shreds and then selling her the next solution, which is an insanity shred, a diet, whatever. We all, we know that game. But the messaging about it's okay to be comfortable with your body and still exercise, or to view yourself as an athlete, even if you're a size 20 or a 24 or a 30, whatever size you are, whatever weight you are, to me, and you'll find this from other people in the fat positivity space and in the fat sports area, is that if you're out there and you're moving, you're an athlete. If you're out there running, walking, doing whatever, you're an athlete and you're showing up. You're doing the activity. And it's some hater, some troll, some person that you don't know on Instagram or on Facebook or whatever that's making you feel bad about your body. They're not the one that's out there doing it. You're the athlete. They're not. All of that said, that's why I came to be like, I'm going to be a personal trainer. I'm going to use this education, and I'm going to specifically reach out to women and want to help women who are plus size that are either new to exercise, they've never done it before, or they have these negative, toxic relationships with exercise where they go, this isn't for me. And it's my goal for women to recenter themselves, view exercise as something that can be part of a holistic lifestyle. But it doesn't have to become your personality. And you don't have to be doing like Jillian Michaels shreds. And you don't have to be doing all of that stuff. But what you do need is like help and support, regardless of what stage you're at. We need accountability. We need consistency if you want to continue to see a result. And that result doesn't have to be weight loss.
Wow. Oh my goodness. I have so many places I could go, so many things we could dive into from that, because that was like amazing. First of all, I am so glad that you're here, that you're okay. Like what things that you've gone through that have led you here. And the miracle of the fact that it led you right into this space, really, that you're doing this work. And specifically redefining fitness for plus size women, helping them define it for themselves. Because I think so often, we're taking that definition from everywhere else but ourselves, because it's been, put on us, given to us. This is what it looks like, sounds like, feels like. And if we don't fit into that, well, then we don't fit into fitness. We don't fit into moving our bodies. We feel even more defeated because we don't fit into someone else's definition. I love that that's even part of the personal training work that you do, is helping these women really define fitness for themselves.
Yeah. And it's something that I guess for me, when I when I had my own transformation, there it is. I hate using those terms, right? Because it's all the transformation, but it was a mindset shift, really. And it was about, like the fitness industry has ownership, or they think they have ownership over what fitness looks like, what it feels like, what you should be doing, what you shouldn't. And I just went like, that's a load of crap. Like that just doesn't make any sense to me. And you see people, and you see it on Instagram, you see it on Facebook, where people are like, oh, well, fat people are just lazy. They don't exercise. Get your butt to a gym. Okay. So then you get your butt to a gym, or you're out running, or you're out doing something. And then these people come up and they're like, oh, you're promoting obesity. How dare you? You're showing a fat person running. Like, what is that? And I just went, you know what? You don't own this term, fitness. You don't own what I do with my body or what it looks like. And so I'm going to take that attitude and that learning. And that is why I want to help other women who just are like, I'm done with this. Like, this is such a load of garbage that I've been fed. But at the same time, I understand how incredibly difficult it is to have that mindset shift. And it's not something that just like happens overnight, because we've been conditioned that no,
Right.
if you don't look that way, if you don't weigh that much, forget it. Don't even bother. And then yet the haters are like, well, you should be exercising. Then when you do, if you're not you don't look the part. So forget it. We don't want you in our house.
You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, and
you
you just
can't
feel
win.
damned altogether. So then you do nothing. And that's
Then
actually,
you do nothing.
that's not what we want, what our bodies really even want. Our bodies were created to move, but not move based on what someone else's expectations of that movement looks like, feels like, sounds like. There's a lot to undo while you're relearning and figuring out what fitness looks like in your world. You're really, like you said, there's that mindset piece. And it really is very similar to the same work I do when we're talking about food. You and I have talked about this a lot. There's so much that goes hand in hand with both of these. There's so much similarities in, and even we talked about this earlier, this pendulum swing, that you go from high restriction, with eating, to feeling out of control, because that's what diets do. Do you notice that pendulum swing? I've experienced it with, when it comes to fitness. I was doing, Shannon, I mean, as disordered as it got, every day, 3 hours a day. I worked out 6 days a week. When I say every day, I mean, Sunday I still took off, though I felt guilty and still had to get all my steps in, just saying.
Right.
And
yeah. Laps around the kitchen or whatever.
yeah, when things got really bad and I finally walked away from all of this and diet culture, and oh my gosh, I'll say the word transformation, because literally everything transformed in my life, because I was a freaking wreck. And I ended up going to zero. So, food takes us, we feel like, out of control, right? We're eating everything. One of the pendulum swings for exercise for me, it went to nothing. I was so disordered. Do you notice that if you have someone who maybe has a history with fitness and exercise, that the pendulum swings for them and they have maybe not the same experience, but something similar? Hey ladies, before you hear Shannon's answer on this, I just wanted to hop in here because it is the new year. And I know for certain diet culture's been working really hard to try to get you to make those New Year's weight loss resolutions. Well, I'm here to say, heck no, we won't go. But also provide you with, what do I do next when I've decided I'm not making weight loss resolutions? They don't work. They make me feel worse about myself, but I do want to focus on my health. I have a free event and I would love you to join us. This free event begins January 9th, and all you need to do is head to theintuitiveeatingmama.com/resolution, or wherever you're listening, click into the show notes, join us for free, and let's begin 2023 free from dieting. All right, after you've done that, let's hop back into this episode.
Yeah. Yes. This is a really interesting question, because I will have clients that come to me and they will have a history of that kind of exercise. I mean, I have that kind of history, right? Where it's just like, oh no, we're going to go hard, right? And that's part of its personality type. And then also part of it is just conditioning. But I will have clients that come to me and they will say, okay, so I have a history of either all or nothing. I go hard or I don't do anything. And I want to find a balance. And then when I had one client actually last week who was like, we've been working together for about 2.5 months. And she's like, this has been really good for me because I think when we started working together, I secretly had it in my head that you were going to come and kick my ass and get me working really hard. I think that I was conditioned to want that from you, but you haven't done that. And that's what's the best part of this. And I was like, well, no, when we started out, you told me clearly that you have this over exercise history. And the goal for us was to talk about sustainable movement, making something that works for her over the long term, and that is going to get her mindset to shift as opposed to like some sort of big physical transformation. So it's either all or nothing. And for her, it's been really good because she's been able to integrate things that she likes and that she didn't count as exercise in the past, like yoga. She's like, oh, well, no, if you're not sweating, like it doesn't, sweating, puffing doesn't count, which is not true. And then she's integrated more walking into her regular everyday life. She's doing different online things that she likes. Like I use an app called Trainerize where I send my programming to my clients. And she said to me, you know what? I don't necessarily like the app. Here's what I'd like to do instead. So came to me with these different online programs that she likes. And I put together a program for her based off of those specific things. So it's like about finding like this flexibility and this movement in the exercise program that you're doing. And for her, it made this huge mental shift. So now she doesn't view it as an all or nothing. She's like, I'm feeling that this is actually sustainable. And when we talk about sustainability, we often think in like a short term. Nobody really thinks about the long term when it comes to exercise, because we're told, right? Like 21-day shred, you're going to have these great results. We know you're not going to be able to sustain it. You don't talk about that in the advertising material, but we know you can't sustain it. And so when I work with my clients, it's about, okay, so we're going to work together for a certain period of months. I'm going to get you going on a training program. I can adjust it as needed depending on what your goals are. And those are going to change and look very different for each client. But when we talk about sustainability, I'm not talking about like 6 months from now. I'm talking about, can you see yourself doing this 2 years from now, 5 years from now, with changes, of course. Like you're not going to be doing the same physical activity 5 years from now. You need to mix it up. Well, maybe you will be, but you need to mix it up. You need to have some variety, but it's more about the consistency in showing up and doing that physical activity and being like, okay, I can sustain this for the next 2 years, for the next 5 years, so that physical activity becomes a part of my life, that I see the gains that I'm making, that I can challenge myself, or I can also cut back, understanding my body needs. So yes, there is a lot of different pendulum swinging. And so often the feedback I get too, when women first start out, is that they immediately fall into this, well, I have to exercise. I have
the shoulding,
the shoulds, right? The shoulding. And it's the same thing with food, right? Well, I can't eat this. I should not be eating this. And it falls right back into those mentalities. And so a big part of the coaching that I do is not just the exercise and how you're feeling, how to properly do something, but it comes down to the mindset. And it comes down to shifting that relationship with exercise.
I think we're really starting to address something that isn't talked about, which is, I think we're kind of going to coin this term together, even though we didn't make it up, but exercise trauma, like really having experience. And there's multiple forms of this. I know we're kind of maybe in one area, because I think any individual can experience really negative things in different ways. But the exercise itself, the shoulds, even the expectations, all of these things, kind of adding to that exercise trauma. Can you talk about that? Because I know, you shared, you have some lived in experience in that, probably have clients with that. I know I relate to it a lot. So I wonder how many of the listeners, have experienced this, and that's why they're like, I don't want to work out. I hate working out. Like, this sucks. I don't want to do this anymore. Can we kind of go there a little bit?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's interesting because trauma has become really popular in the last few years in terms of how we understand people's experiences and shifting things from a personal failing or a personal inadequacy and looking at it more as like, well, not what's wrong with you, but what's happened to you. And we're looking at that in terms of like neuroscience, and it's across the board. And so we use the word trauma quite often, and you go and then when you go exercise trauma, what are you like? You might go, well, what do you mean? What are you talking about? And like trauma doesn't have to be, like something that you saw in war or you're a victim of a violent crime. You can have large T trauma, which is those bigger events, but you can also have like smaller T trauma, which is small events that your brain interprets the same way as pain, like a physical pain. So like that's an important thing to understand with this whole concept of trauma, is that the brain interprets physical pain and mental pain or emotional pain the same way, and it activates the same areas in your brain. So, with exercise trauma, part of it can definitely be physical. You may have suffered a really severe injury. You may have overworked yourself and your body, and you completely burned out. And so, you've got this physical trauma that you're carrying around in your body that is going like, no, I don't want to exercise. I can't do it. Have no interest in it. Because what if this happens again? Then you've also got the emotional trauma. And I think that for me, that is where most of mine comes from, because of the horrible experiences that I had being teased because of my size, gym class. Like I can go back to it, junior high gym class. Well, it started in elementary, but really intensified. Junior high gym class, being forced to run around the field to warm up during track and field and soccer. I could never keep up. The code, like gym teachers timing you, they're yelling at you, run faster. Like it was to the point with me where I would become this anxious wreck before gym class. I would be coming up with every excuse. I'd call my mom and be like, oh, it's my period and I've got cramps. I need to come home. Or, oh, it's this or it's that. Like it was so emotionally traumatizing for me and was this constant source of stress that it just left me with this horrible, horrible relationship with exercise. And I think that there's a lot of us that can easily relate, whether it was junior high, whether it was high school, whether it was when you were older and you went to the gym and you were fat shamed, or you used it as a tool of punishment and that you've only ever used it to burn off your calories. Or in your case, you were working out all these days of the week, and you probably threw your body into absolute chaos, like hormonally, and mentally and physically.
Okay, Shannon doesn't even know me from back then, and she's like literally reading my mail right now because that's what happened. Oh my God. I'm still recovering hormonally from what I did to myself, but I digress.
Yes.
And I actually think the experiences from early on in childhood, adolescence, puberty, oh gosh, puberty. I think all of those experiences when it comes to movement, and if you weren't naturally gifted, I know plenty of people who were very gifted in being athletic at a young age, and not being one of those people. Okay. My family still thinks it's hilarious that freshman year of high school, I played field hockey. I don't know if that is still a thing everywhere, but I played field hockey. It was a
Good for
girls'
you.
sports. I know. I mean, good for me, except I felt worse about myself because I'm like, I thought it was the thing I had to do, right? I'll get fit. Those messages came in. I mean, I've always been like hey, I'll try it. I always, I look back and I had a very ugly relationship with movement most of my life. The one good thing that came out of orthorexia and my disordered eating was I discovered I like lifting weights. Like I
Hey,
also,
that's a
I
good
know
one.
it is a really good one. I don't do it obsessively anymore, which is also good. But I do think there is this. I love how you talk about the little T trauma and that those things matter. And sometimes I think we need to unpack those as part of the process. There's some forgiving, some letting go. There's it's the mindset part, right? That's what you're talking about. There's something to that. And I appreciate that you have like this compassion and empathy, for those who are in that space, who hold on to those things. And no wonder it's like an uphill battle to want to move your body when you have this negative story attached to it. I love that that's woven in there. Again, you are the most personalized personal trainer. I'm loving this so much. I'm really curious.
Thank
All right. So
you.
some, thank you, Shannon. I mean, again, this thing happened to you and it was so like awful, but yet here it landed you. And of course I'm like, wow, we need you. We need you. So if someone wants to move, right? They want to increase movement in their life, or maybe they're just starting or they're restarting after maybe working through some of this trauma or just wanting to do something. Where would they start? Can you give the listeners like one thing that might be really valuable in that kind of headspace of like, all right, Shannon, I want to get back to moving. What do I do?
It's a really good question. I like it.
I'm really full of
So
good questions. Isn't that amazing?
that's nice about these. It's nice about podcast interviews when they have lots of questions and you're like, okay, great. I hope you do. Otherwise, it's silent. You wouldn't have a podcast if you didn't have good questions. So this is a challenge. Like this is not just like oh yeah, I'll just go to the gym, just start walking, just do this. It's really about sitting down with yourself, and I think the best place to start is not about like the exercise itself, but it's coming up with your list of whys. And why should I, what not should, take out should. Why do I want to do this? Why is it that I feel that exercise can be a part of my life? And once you've got your whys figured out, it's then kind of coming to the how. And the whys don't have to be weight loss related, right? Like this is where it starts with clients. Like when I start talking with clients, it's about, okay, so what we're going to do some goal setting, but let's first talk about why you want to move. And a couple of the most recent ones, and this is fairly common, it comes down to they just want to feel better. And then I say, well, define feel better. Well, I want to just move my body so I don't feel like crap anymore. I'm just sick and tired of feeling like crap and dealing with pain. And a lot of women that come to me that haven't been moving, or they are, in a place where they are like, I need to restart. Pain is often a very common thing that comes up. Lower back pain, chronic pain of other kinds. Like you can have acute, you can have chronic, but often it's kind of a chronic ongoing thing that has been caused by just a sedentary lifestyle. And that's like, regardless of your size or your weight. Like if you're just sitting around all the time, you're going to have some pain because you're just sitting around all the time. But often it's just about redefining those goals and thinking about what it is that you are going to gain from a movement practice. And then not putting shoulds on it, but looking at what those benefits are. And pain reduction is a big one. Being able to sleep better, that's another big one. That you're, in a place where your mental health has improved. That's another really, really big one. So it's about re-looking at your why and then starting to think about, well, what kind of movement is going to make me happy? Not what's the kind of movement that I should be doing or somebody says I should be doing. It's looking at my options. And so with my clients, I always recommend having a cardio component, which is important for your cardiovascular health, but it doesn't have to be like running and crazy cardio. It could be as simple as a walking program. It could be dancing. It could be swimming, whatever's going to bring you joy. But then I also recommend strongly is strength training. And not because I want you to bulk up, but because of the benefits, especially for women, when it comes to improving insulin resistance, reducing your risk of osteoporosis. It helps with mood. But the benefits of the strength training when it comes to pain reduction is often where with a client, they're like, oh, I didn't know that. And I'm like, yeah, like there's some simple stuff we can start doing that's going to help with your lower back pain, or it's going to help with your shoulders. And then you're going to sleep better, and then you're going to feel better. And then maybe, next year you'll run a marathon or not. But, that is the thing is that, once you see what you have to gain and that you can potentially be reducing your physical pain, and you can work through emotional pain, and you can work through some of these other issues through movement, that is where redefining that relationship with exercise, that is where I recommend starting.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. Now they're going to want to work through this why and digging deeper. but I think they're also going to want to connect with you because this is so good. I mean, this is really changing the narrative, and I am here for it. So, Shannon, how can listeners connect with you? Where can they follow you? Give us all the goods.
You betcha. So the best place to connect with me is on Instagram. So my username is at Shannon_50. That is where I kind of live, is on Instagram. So people can check me out on Instagram. They can take a look at the link in my bio, which is a link to my program video where I talk a little bit more about what I do in my personal training program. And then there's an application on there that people can fill out. Takes about 5 or so minutes. And then I get a nice little ding in my inbox, and then we can have a chat more about your personal health goals, where you're at, where you want to go. You can ask me more questions about the program. You can ask me all kinds of stuff. And I like to get on calls with people, but I'm also just cool with DMing people, because that seems to be what everybody's got time for these days, is DMing. So, right? So it's DMing. And so, yes, Instagram is the best place to connect with me. And I do reels that poke fun at diet culture. A lot of poking
I'm
fun
also
at
here
diet
for that.
culture.
Yes,
Yeah,
please. More of
yeah,
that.
that's kind of my
Sorry,
jam.
not sorry.
Story,
I
not
like
story.
it. Sorry. I
Exactly.
love it.
So
I love it.
trying
This
to
is so
try to
good.
push the narrative, and get people to laugh and not take it so seriously,
Yeah.
understanding that this is such a huge part of everybody's life, and there's so much crap out there. We need to have a message that is like, yeah, you know what, fat women can be fit, go figure, ha ha ha. Or like, just trying to push that envelope and get people to think outside of the box.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's where I live, is
I love
Instagram.
it. Well, I'm glad you live there because that's how we connected. And again, it makes me so, so happy that you do hang out in those DMs and that you're willing to help women really redefine for themselves fitness and movement and exercise. This is so good. Is there anything else you wanted to share with the listeners today?
You know what? We've covered off a lot, and it's been a really great conversation. And I just think it's so beautiful how we can mesh something like intuitive eating and what you're the expert in, and that we can look at movement in a similar way. And that, movement can be intuitive. It's just, again, it's about connecting in with your body, and having help and learning how to do that is absolutely important and vital for success. So it's really what it comes down to, is like body wisdom at the end of the day. And we're so disconnected from that. This is that opportunity to relearn it in your context with food, and then in my context with physical activity.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think imagine if you had both. They go hand in hand.
They
I'm
go
going to
hand in
definitely
hand.
make sure I link Shannon's Instagram, get on there, have some fun with her reels, and then also connect with her, because I think if you've been at that struggle point, Shannon's going to be able to really help you unlock those spaces and then move forward with movement. I love this. Thank you so much for coming on today, Shannon.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been great, Jen.
Ladies, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Shannon. I hope that you connect with her on Instagram. And I look forward to having you in my free event starting January 9th. Don't forget to click into the show notes for all the good things from this episode. All right, see you right back here next week.